Hey everybody, in this video what we're going to do is we're going to set up SSO between Azure and AWS so that we can maintain and manage multiple accounts and sign in just using My Apps. So right here, if you're familiar with Azure, you have the myapps.microsoft.com site where you have all your tiles, and you can just go in here and click wherever you want to go. So it makes it easy for if you have a Microsoft 365 tenant, and many companies do, just because they're using the email from Microsoft. So if you're using Outlook, you're probably using this. Otherwise, you can also integrate this with other systems such as Okta, other sign-in identity management systems. And so the way we do this is, right now we're in EC2, so we're going to go to identity, just search for identity. It's called the IAM Identity Center. It was formerly known as AWS Single Sign-On. Let's go in there. And Control Tower, what it did is it set up a access portal already. But what we're going to do is we're going to change this, because let's go to settings, identity source. Right now authentication is set to the identity source is the Identity Center directory, which are the users and groups here. So, and direct provisioning. So what we'll do is we'll go here. We're going to change identity source. And we have three options here. Identity Center directory, that's the local one. Active Directory, that is using the managed Microsoft AD or an AD connector in AWS. If you have either of those, you can use this option. Or if you want to do Azure or Okta or Ping or one of those, you're going to do external identity provider. I think this is the most flexible. So we click next, and it's going to give us a sign-in, portal sign-in, an assertion consumer service URL, and an identity center issuer URL. Okay, so this is where we want to go into Microsoft here. We want to go here. And if you have admin privileges, you're going to need admin privileges to do this. So we click admin. I'm going to close this other link. And what we'll do is we'll take this and let's put this in half the screen. So we put that in half the screen. And let's move this. And we'll move this into the other half of the screen. Nope. Okay. All right, so let's see what we have. So we have admin. Let's go in there. This will take us to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, and this has already been set up. This is my test account that I have set up. There are users in here. So if we go into Azure Active Directory, so Azure AD, you'll see there are a bunch of users. Let's look at the users. All users. And I can make some more videos about this and how to set this part up, but Azure AD is very useful. And so here it even sets up a bunch of test users in your AD account. When you're setting it up, you have the option to do that. So I recommend that. So let's take a look at applications. So this is where we're going to go. Enterprise applications. And you can see I already have an SSO account for another account that I'm using for another AWS account. So that's already set up. So what we'll do is we'll do a new application and we'll just type in AWS. And we're going to do this. You can do it for a single account or here AWS IAM Identity Center. So that's what we're looking at. Let's go back to this. So let's set it up for IAM Identity Center, and the name. Now that is, I think that's what's going to appear. That's a pretty long name. Well, let's just use that. We'll just default to that, but we'll see how this looks. Okay, so we're creating that. It's going to create that new name. Automatic provisioning is supported. What that means is that if you create a group, add it to here, and then add users to that group, they'll be automatically provisioned over in AWS, and they'll be able to connect to it. All right, so here we go. So it's name, application ID, object ID. So we're not going to assign users and groups quite yet, but we're going to set up single sign-on. So let's do that. So it's going to be SAML, and let's edit here, basic SAML. It's going to tell us. So this will be, what we're going to use for this is the IAM Identity Center issuer URL. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that in. So add identifier, paste, okay, add reply URL. So the reply URL, the assertion consumer service URL, you can see that's the ACS URL. That's right here. So let's put that in there. Okay. Now that that is done, so we're not going to do the sign-in URL. If we have any issues, what I'll do is I'll take a look at the one that's already set up, but that should be that. Is there a save button here? I don't see a save. So let's close that. Let's cancel that. So save is up here. All right, so let's save that. Okay, so now what we can do is we can close that, and now you have the identifier entity ID. I think that is correct. I'm going to test later. Optional, optional, optional. All right. Attributes and claims, you don't have to change anything here. This should stay the same. All of the SAML certificates. So that should be good. What we're going to want to do is IDP certificate. So we are going to want to get that. The SAML metadata. So let's download that. That's the Federation metadata XML. And the IDP certificate. And I think we want the base 64. Alright. Alright, so let's do this. Let's choose the file over here. I'm going to go to our downloads. And we're going to go to, for this one, this is the XML. And that's our XML file. And then next, choose our file here. And this should be that file that we just downloaded, the certificate. And that looks good. Okay. So that looks good, that looks good. We'll click next here. So it's going to say you're changing the identity source. So it's going to say our former identity source will not work. So we just have to acknowledge that. So let's change identity source. And let's make sure that this is working. So we're going to enable automatic provisioning. And there we're going to get a token. So that's going to be something we're going to have to set up in provisioning. Okay, so I install the Azure AD browser extension. You can do that. Okay. So we're not going to test it yet. Hold on, let's do this. Let's go to provisioning. So we want to go to automatic provisioning, and this is where it's going to tell us right here and I'm going to show the token. I'm going to pause briefly while I show the token. I don't really know if that matters, but 1 second. Okay, I added the token in there. Let's test connection. And that worked. So that's good. All right, save that. And you can send a email notification if it fails. And you can prevent accidental deletion. All right, so we've got provisioning set up. That's good. Okay, let's see. Our next step here is in our enterprise app. We've got this saved. So let me close that. I don't want to save that. Let's go to, we're going to go back into AD, and I'm going to go to groups and all groups, and what I'll do is I'm going to add a new group. So I'm going to say new group, and we'll call this will be a security group, and this is going to be AWS underscore Chris org underscore console admin. All right, so now we're going to see where this comes into play. This will be console admin to Chris org AWS accounts. Okay. And that's it. So let's create that. Okay, so now we should see that group. Let's refresh here. And there it is. All right, so let's take that group, and what we'll do is, let's go into that group, and we'll add a member. And the member I'm going to add is the one I'm logged in as, which is myself. So let's find that. We'll just do a search. and select. Okay, so now that has been added to AD. I added a group, I added a user to that group. Now we go back to our enterprise app, which we just created, and it's going to be right AWS IAM. Here you can see it. So that's the full name. So if you wanted to change that name, you could change that name when you add it right here. You could make that name whatever you want it to be. Just that's how it's going to show up in my apps. Okay. So now we're going to add that group that we just created. And that group was named AWS. And select. Okay, so that group's been, and then we have to click assign. Okay, so that has been assigned to the enterprise app that has one user in it. It should get provisioned because we've set up automatic provisioning. I'm going to close this now because we're done with that part. So single sign-on, as long as we got everything right here. And provisioning, let's just make sure we've got that set up. Initial cycle, so you can even start provisioning. And you can view the provisioning logs right here, and you see what's going on. Nothing showing up yet. But what you'll see over here in AWS is you'll see a user, and you can see right now this user has been added, and the group should also be here. Yep, there it is. AWS Chris Org console admin. So that has been provisioned automatically, and it happens every, I don't know the exact time. Let's take a look, see if we can figure that out. How often it actually provisions. You can provision on demand. Oh, here's the details. So there it is, 40 minutes. So every 40 minutes, when you add a new user to a group, it will provision them over into AWS within 40 minutes. You could also run provisioning over here. You can run a manual provision on demand. Yeah, provision on demand right there. So you can do that. All right, so now that we've done that, let's take a look at my apps. Let's refresh my apps. Well, we don't even have to refresh. There it is. This AWS successor to has shown up. So now if I click there, this will tell us if it worked. Okay, so I don't have any applications, and that's true, but I'm able to log in. So now the last step that we have to do is go over here to Identity Center. We have a group over here, and we have to go into our AWS account. And what we can do here is I'm just going to give administrator access to the Chris Org account. So I'll assign users or groups. I'll click here, click next, and we'll give it a permission set. So that group will get administrator access. Now, you can create your own permission sets here and be very granular in your permissions of how you permission a certain site or a certain account to each user. So you can be very granular with your permissions, and you should be. You want to give least privilege. So next, and it's going to give me this console admin. Anyone in there is going to have permissions. Submit. Do not leave this page. It's assigning it. It's assigned. Okay, now what I should see over here is this. It shows up as AWS account. You click there, click Chris Org account, and I can get management access. And it's signing me in. And it's actually signed me out over here. But what you can see is Chris R at chrisrtest.onmicrosoft. It shows up here. And I'm in to the account now with single sign-on. So that is how to set up single sign-on. And it's really quite simple from Azure AD. And it's really, really powerful. Much better way to access it. You can control it. You can have if you're using Azure AD already, or whatever SAML compliant identity or access management you're using, it's better to manage it all in there, because when someone comes into the company or leaves the company, you can easily assign permissions and remove permissions. It's just makes the life a lot easier. Don't use local IAM accounts in AWS. So that's it. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if this has been helpful, and I appreciate it.